Welcome back. Chapter 42, Ruth. My lungs burn as I tear around the corner of Sunrise. I'm within sight of the entrance now. It's less than 40 yards away. Then the world tilts beneath my feet. I skid to a stop. James is stepping out the front door, very close to Catherine, his arms pressed against her back. Time shudders to a halt. I can't breathe. I watch as they move together down the paved walkway into the parking lot. My deepest fears has arisen. All that work and he still gotta. A silent scream fills my throat as my visions tunnels to focus only on my daughter and the man with her. How did he find us? I can't wait to find out. James is far too close to Catherine, and he seems to be holding something against her back. I can't tell for sure, but from the angle of his hand, I suspect it's a gun. My legs begin to move, propelling me towards them. I walk slowly, as soundlessly as possible, using cars as shields. Catherine stumbles, and James grabs her arm with his free hand, roughly jerking her upright. She releases a small, high-pitched sound. Fury mingles in my terror. I want to claw off James' face. I slide my hand into my purse and pull out my knife and car keys, then ease my purse to the ground and leave it there. I don't want anything to encumber my movements. I know that's right, girl. I cannot let James get her into a vehicle. If he does, she may be gone forever. It's too late to call the police. Even if they arrive in time, sirens blaring, Catherine could be caught in the crossfire if James starts shooting. James had nothing to lose right now. If the thought of him and me being together sustained him during his prison sentence, he knows now his fantasy was no more substantial than a fever dream. The parking lot is well lit close to the Sunrise entrance, but shadows nibble at its corners. At this time of night, no one else is around. I ease nearer to James and Catherine, ducking my head low as they move towards the far end of the lot. I watch through the clear window of the Sunrise van as James turns around and checks behind him and then resumes walking. I look back too. No one is coming. The three of us are alone in the parking lot, but James hasn't seen me yet. Strength is pouring into my body in equal proportions to every ounce of love I have for my daughter. My senses are sharpening, and my vision is expanding. I'm aware of the flickering bulb in the overhead light, the sliver of moon in the sky, and the faint chirping of crickets. Through it all, my gaze never leaves Catherine's. Catherine and James are nearing the Bonneville, but James may not know it's our car. If I could slip inside and drive towards them, and Catherine manages to dive out of the way, I could run James over. I can't risk it, though. A bullet is faster than a speeding car. They've stopped moving. I draw as close as I dare, aided by darkness, until I can hear their voices. I'm concealed behind a Buick now, less than 10 feet away. Call her, James ordered. What do you want me to say? Catherine asks. Whatever it takes to get her here. A plan forms in my mind. My phone is inside my purse, which I dropped. I can't remember if it's on vibrate or not. If Catherine calls and it rings, will the sound carry and distract James long enough to give me a chance? I unsheath my knife as Catherine takes her phone out of her pocket and dials a number. I crouch lower, like a sprinter getting into a starting line stance. I tighten my grip on the handle of my knife. But there's no ringing sound from across the parking lot. My phone must be on vibrate, or the noise is too muffled from within my purse for us to hear it. I desperately want to answer Catherine's call, but I have to move too quickly to get there in time, which will almost certainly attract James' attention. Then James says something that makes my stomach plummet. Mom isn't picking up? He knows Catherine is my daughter. She must be far more valuable to him as a pawn now. What else has he discovered? I can't risk what might happen to Catherine next. I hold my knife down, pressing it against the outside of my right thigh in an effort to conceal it as I step out of the shadows. James, I'm here. It's about to go down, y'all. James half turns to look at me but doesn't otherwise react. If I've shocked him by suddenly appearing, he doesn't reveal it. Catherine is staring at me with a blank expression. I can feel the waves of fear rolling off of her. Anger bubbles deep inside me. It's the primal rage of a woman whose child is being threatened. Let her go, James. Let her go, he echoes, his voice is mocking. When we're finally having a family reunion? Shock whips through me. He knows everything. I waited for you, Ava. I know he means not just on that long ago night when he was arrested, but for the past 24 years. She has nothing to do with this, I tell James. She had no idea you were her father until last night. James blinks. The only sign I've caught him off guard. Is that true? Catherine looks towards me, unsure of what to do. Tell him the truth, Catherine, I urge. She told me that her boyfriend got her pregnant and denied I was his, Catherine says. Stop looking at her, James commands Catherine. He moves slightly away so he can face her. Now I can clearly see the gleaming black gun he has trained on her. Catherine obeys, shifting her eyes to James. Why did you reach out to me on Facebook? He asks. The truth, Catherine, I think. For her to have a chance of surviving this, James must blame me and me alone. I built up lies like a wall of bricks to protect her from James, but the only way to keep her safe now is to smash them down. I was trying to learn more about my mom. She never talked about her past. I didn't know where she grew up or what her real name was, or anything really. So she kept us apart all these years? Did you ever miss having a father? Catherine is torn. I can see it. She doesn't want to spark James' anger towards me. Answer my question. James' voice is dangerously calm. Sometimes. James stares at Catherine intently. Then he slowly begins to lower his gun. He must sense she isn't lying. Everything was my fault, James, I whisper. Please, let her go. I take a slow step toward them. James twists his head to look at me and his eyes widen. He sees the knife I'm pressing to the side of my leg. His reaction unnerves me. He throws back his head and laughs. James crazy. I'll give you credit, Ava. You're tough as hell. You always looked as sweet as candy, but I saw what you were hiding inside. It's why we belonged together. James does something to his gun. I can't tell if he's taking the safety off or putting it on, then flicks his wrist sideways like he's skipping a stone across the water. The weapon goes skittering beneath a car. I don't relax for a millisecond, and you better not. James is most dangerous when he seems peaceful. Violence centers him in a way nothing else can. He lifts his arm and spreads them wide, like he's surrendering. Go ahead, Ava. Come at me. Catherine must think I'm the bad guy. Let our daughter see you're a killer. What? Okay. He's goading me. How will you feel after you stab me, Ava? Will you regret it once you see my blood? Will you change your mind and try to call an ambulance to save me? I know exactly what he's doing. He's trying to push inside my head to throw me off balance. I take a step closer, the knife steady in my hand. Catherine is frozen in place. Run! I will the command to her with every fiber of my being. She begins to edge away. Catherine. She halts at the sound of James' voice. Your mother is right about one thing. None of this is your fault. You did have a father, one who loved your mother very much. He would have loved you too. James is speaking in the past tense, as if he is already dead. I lift the knife an inch higher. To tell you the truth, I kind of like the thought of having a part of me continue on. Then James does something that curdles my blood. He walks over and put his hand on either side of Catherine's face and tenderly touch his lips to her forehead, like he is a loving father kissing his daughter good night. We both watch as Catherine turns and walks towards the entrance of Sunrise. When she's almost to the front door to safety, I lunge at James, my knife slashing, hoping to seize the element of surprise. He rears back and lifts his forearm to protect his throat. His reflexes lightning quick. My blade cuts through his skin, but not deeply enough to do any real damage. James skips backward as I jab at him with the knife, like this is some light-hearted game. Blood drips from his arm. He's smiling. This is who you are, Ava. This is who you've always been. I shake off his words. I cannot let him overpower me psychologically. I lunge at him again, but this time my knife meets air as he feints to the side and grabs my wrist with one hand. His grip is so powerful that my hand feels immobilized. I hold onto the knife as long as I can, but when he shakes my wrist, it slips from my fingers and clatters to the pavement. James kicks it away as he draws me to him. His wounded arms snaking around me, he crushes me against his body. Then he leans down and kisses me, his mouth greedily covering mine. I bite down hard on his lip. He pulls back his head and smiles. That's my girl, he whispered. Then he headbutts me. My legs give way and I fall back on the pavement, my ears ringing, pain through my body. James straddles me, his knees on either side of my rib cage, his hands tightening around my throat. Catherine, come back and save your mama. Come back and save her. Look up at the stars, Ava. They're still our stars. I twist and thrash, trying to knock him off, but I'm no match for his weight and power. My lungs are burning. I see a blue vein bulging in James' neck as he increases the pressure. White bursts of lights explode in front of my eyes. The gun. Catherine, get the gun. I stretch out my arms and feel around on the cold asphalt, trying in vain to touch the gun or knife. Then I arch up desperately, putting all of my strength into my back, but I can't even shift James off balance. My lungs scream for air. Strength ebbs out of my body. I have almost no fight left. James is staring deeply into my eyes. He must want to watch the life drain out of me. But I no longer see James. Instead, I see Catherine as a baby, sleeping in my arms, her dark lashes resting on her cheeks, her pudgy hand wrapped trustfully around my pinky. I see her as a 5-year-old, sitting on a stool and coloring while I close up at work. I see her as a 10-year-old, running through a grassy park, the red and white striped kite I bought at the dollar store, sailing through the air behind her. Then I see Catherine rise up like a dark shadow behind James. That's right, Catherine. She's clenching a thick white pen in her fist. She jabs it into the vein of James' neck, then silently dances backward and disappears from view. James jerks his head to the side in an annoyed gesture as if he has been bitten by a mosquito. He reaches up with one hand to touch the spot, but keeps his other hand pressed down on my neck. I frantically suck in a sip of air. James shakes his head and wraps his hand back around my neck, but now the pressure he exerts is weaker. Catherine appears out of the darkness a second later, jabbing at James' neck again. This time, he swings her arm back as she makes contact, catching her in the side, sending her flying on the hard pavement. James shakes his head again. "What did you do to me?" he whispered. He winces, then slowly blinks a few times. I claw at James' arms, digging my nails into the cut I inflicted with the knife. His upper half slumps to the side as if he's lost control over his limbs. His hands fall away from my neck. I desperately suck in oxygen, hyperventilating. The blackness slowly recedes from the corners of my vision. I'm too weak to move yet, and James seems to be too. He is still sitting on me, but it's like he made out of putty. Catherine rises to her feet, rubbing her elbow, and walks over to him. As if he is no more substantial than a mannequin, she lifts her foot and pushes him over. He topples onto the pavement beside me, his eyes open. He's alive, but seems unable to control his body. He reaches out towards me, then his arm flops down. Catherine stretches out a hand and take it. Catherine stretches out a hand and I take it. She helps me sit up. I immediately retch and she rubs my back. "Easy," she says. "What did you do to him?" I croak, echoing James' question. My throat is so raw it hurts to talk. "Insulin. I injected almost 2 months worth of dose directly into his bloodstream." Dang! A thin line of drool oozes out of James' mouth. His eyes are half closed, but they are still watching us. His mouth twitches as if he's trying to speak. "What's going to happen to him?" I ask. "If he doesn't get help now, he'll die." I stare at Catherine. She looks steadily back at me. Neither of us move. Okay. All right. Okay. Chapter 43, Catherine. No one was with me in the Campbell's kitchen when I opened their refrigerator and tucked June's insulin pen into the waistband of my shorts. Most people know insulin tilts the scales of life and death for diabetics. Fewer are aware of how lethal it can be when injected into a non-diabetic. When people have low body fat and high muscle mass, like James, their veins tend to be more prominent. Even before we left the Campbell's apartment, I'd identified the one that would be my target. As I help my mother into the passenger seat of the Bonneville, I assess her vitals. Her heart rate has slowed, but her skin still feels cool and clammy. The whites of her eyes are stained red with burst blood vessels, and her forehead is swelling up. "I'll be right back," I tell her as I close the car door. I know it may be disconcerting for her to be alone with James' body, which we lifted into our trunk. My job means I often brush up against death, but she has never witnessed it up close. Yes, she has. She saw the coach die, girl, remember? Oh, yeah, you should know. But I need to retrieve my mother's purse, her knife, and James' gun before we drive off. After I've collected the items and returned to the car, I slip into the driver's seat. The only sign James was in the parking lot is the small reddish-brown stain from the blood that spilled from his arm. As it dries and its hemoglobin breaks down, it'll darken and eventually disappear. I start the engine and ease our car out of the lot. My mother seems to be in shock, but I'm functioning well. Of course you are. The only sound in our car is the low growl of our wheels moving across the pavement. My mind is spinning too as I probe every corner and seam of my plans, making sure they are airtight. I already took James' phone out of his pocket and made sure he wasn't carrying anything else that could identify him. The only thing I discovered was a single car key. It must belong to the vehicle he used to get to the Thai restaurant before he caught a ride with the Campbells. When I'm a few miles down the road and no other headlights are in sight, I wipe down the key on the hem of my t-shirt and toss it out of my window, aiming toward the grass on the side of the road. A mile or so later, I wiped down James' phone. I pressed the brakes of the Bonneville before I hurled James' phone onto the road ahead of us. Then I drive over it, pulverizing it beneath the tire. The crunch it makes is satisfying. Disposing of James' body will be more challenging. Insulin overdoses are very difficult to trace forensically. Even autopsies can't pinpoint them most of the time, which means it would be hard to ever prove James was murdered. George and June are the only witnesses who saw the two of us together, other than Paul the guard, who waved when James and I walked out. But James ducked his head and pretended to scratch an itch with his eyebrow, so I doubt Paul even glimpsed his face. As for George and June, they would never in a million years believe an escaped convict sat in their apartment drinking champagne. Even if they saw a TV clip with James' photo, their conscious mind would override that instinctually snap of recognition, reminding them James is my cousin. Their polite, socially groomed brains would create acceptable explanations. Lots of people look alike, they'll tell each other. They'll decide they could be misremembering James' feature. What with the champagne and my surprise, there was a lot going on during our brief visit. Our minds do this all the time. They talk us out of things we don't want to know. Still, it would be better if James' body was never found. I've been thinking about the problem, and I believe burying it in a remote location is the solution. It will be safe to keep James' body in our trunk tonight. Before I know it, we're running into the parking lot of our apartment building. I've been so lost in thought I don't even remember driving here. I cut the engine. There's one more thing I need to do before we go inside. I unbuckle my seatbelt and twist to face my mother. I think of how furious and bewildered and scared I've been and say, everything you did, I still don't understand it. Then I release those emotions and allow myself to remember the bone-deep fear and rage I felt when I saw James atop her limp body and thought I might have gotten there too late. But I will always love you. She exhales and closes her eyes. Then she opens them, tells me she loves me too. Okay, that's the end of chapter 43. Wow. That's how it went down? Is it really that easy to get rid of James? I don't know nothing about insulin, but like they said, insulin for a person who don't have diabetics is deadly. Do you think he's dead? Because you know how them crazy people be not, dying or nothing like that. But that was quick. If that was it, that was quick. And am I satisfied with that? Yeah, I'm kind of satisfied with it because in my mind, I was thinking he was deranged, crazy. But once he found out he had a daughter, he didn't really want to harm Catherine. He wanted to get at Ruth. So I understand how, Catherine got away and then was able to, save her mother from him killing her. So he's in the trunk of the car. And yes, he did. Well, we have 3 more chapters and then the epilogue. I'm going to say, yeah, possible. I'm going to see y'all in the rest of the chapters. Bye for now.